He came in and said he was really excited that I was an econ major, and the question he wanted me to answer was to talk about some of the economic effects of the internet. And that was so easy for me because I talked about how on city council we're losing sales tax revenues because there are no sales taxes on sales on the internet. And we just went off on this tangent about talking about economics and government, and I don't even remember where the interview went. And I remember thinking, I really, really wanted to work with this guy. This would be really cool. And when I came to work here, we worked in cubes right next to each other for the whole time that we were here together. And one of the ones I remember is the time when he had sent me some email about technology. And I sent back a really smart-ass reply about how men and their toys and how men have to have fast cars and they love technology, and it was really just a reflection of their manhood. And he, out of the blue, he yells over the cue ball, Rosie, if women ran the world, would buildings be circular? And so you had no idea, if you were listening to this conversation, where that came from or what the context of the conversation was. And so of course I shot back, well, you know, Jos, in matriarchal agrarian societies, houses were built circular around a central courtyard. This is the center of family life. And he shouts back, you know, I'm really very skeptical of these matriarchal agrarian societies where they, what, danced to resolve their conflicts? And I said, no, Jos, bake-offs. And he just yelled, I didn't say that. And the entire department just fell apart. This was every day. This was every day, all day long. The other one I remember is the St. Clair of Assisi test, where he came in and he had found something about St. Clair of Assisi on the internet and about how she had visions. And of course he always asked me all the Catholic questions because he knew I was up on Catholic stuff. And I explained to him, I said, yes, I said, you know, because she saw visions, she was named as the patron saint of computers and technology by the Catholic Church. And he thought that was extraordinary that we had a patron saint for computers. And I said, well, I said, you know, it's absolutely no coincidence. I said, what is the name of the county that Silicon Valley is housed in? I said, Santa Clara County. He thought that was pretty amazing and decided right there and then he was going to put St. Clair of Assisi as his wallpaper on his computer. And he proceeded to give all of us a St. Clair of Assisi quiz he had found on the internet. And of course, once again, the entire department comes to a grinding halt while Jos gives a St. Clair of Assisi quiz. It's just every single day, all day long. I remember thinking when I would come in on Mondays, what a bummer, because he didn't work on Mondays. And I would come in and sit down and be ready to yell something to him, and then I remember, oh, he wasn't there. But then when he'd come in on Tuesday, I had 3 days worth of stuff. We had to shoot back and forth to each other, so Tuesday mornings were particularly unproductive. Not for us, we were incredibly productive. It was the rest of the department who had to listen to all this. And on the mornings when he would come in, you would hear him coming down, and you'd hear him talking already because he'd be yelling to people, and people would be saying good morning to him, and it was just like, Jos is here, Jos is here. You could just feel, you know, as he was coming down the hallway. And the first thing he'd say when he came by my cube would be, Rosie, are we going to have fun today? And I would, depending on my mood, I'd either grumble something or I'd give him some smart-ass reply back. And the other thing he'd always ask is if we were going to be productive today. He would say, we're going to get so much done today. And I don't know that we ever did, because I would leave early in the afternoon, about 3:30, and then I'd say, okay, Jos, I'm out of here. I'm off to serve you. And he'd make some smart remark about how I can improve Mountain View on my way off to City Hall. And he was such a part of being here, of being at work. when you think about spending 6 or 7 waking hours with someone every day, it's more time than you spend with just about anybody else in your life awake. And that's what it was like with Jos. He would walk me to lunch every day. Every day he'd say, okay, let's go. And he'd walk me across the street. He'd go upstairs and get the other people that he was going to have lunch with. And I'd go into the cafeteria. But every day he would walk me across the street to lunch. And it was just those little things that made up the rhythm of our everyday lives. And I remember one day in the cafeteria when I came in after him, he was about 5 people ahead of me in line. And I was struggling over some Pearl questions, and he was my Pearl guru. He just, you know, he just was always able to figure out some really elegant way to write a piece of script. And I remember coming into the cafeteria, and the cafeteria is packed. And I see Jos about 5 people ahead of me in line, and of course I get all excited because I need to ask him this question. And I yell across the cafeteria to him, Jos, don't think I just love you for your body. I need you to help me with an array in my Pearl script. The entire cafeteria stops, and one man turns to Jos and says, I've waited all my life for a woman to say that to me. And a bunch of people just start bowing at Jos. And that's how it was. Things were always lively when he was around. You just never knew what he was going to say or what he was going to do. But you just knew it was going to be something funny and off the wall. I didn't get to spend much time with Jos outside of work. And I really regret that. I don't know if we had more time, if we would have spent more time together out of work. But we did have one date, our one big date, and I'm sure Jos didn't consider it a date. But I really had a crush on Jos, and I tried to figure out, okay, how could I spend some time with this guy outside of work? So, of course, I fell back on my position of power. And I told Jos that I needed a date for an official city function, and would he accompany me to this official city function? And he agreed. And what it was the West Coast premiere of the Joy Luck Club, the play, at the Center for Performing Arts in Mountain View. And before it was going to be a dinner at a local Chinese restaurant. And this was all organized by Leadership Mountain View, which was a group of basically movers and shakers in Mountain View, such that there is. And all these people had gone through the leadership program, and they were commissioners and all kinds of council members, committee members, heads of nonprofits in the city. I mean, basically just a mini who's who of Mountain View. So I told Jos, okay, no jeans, because you never knew what Jos was going to show up in. I mean, a man who shops at ragtime and is really proud of 65-cent shirts, you want to give him a little bit of guidance about what he's going to wear to a big deal official city function. So I said, okay, Jos, I said, no jeans, you want to look kind of nice. I said, okay. So he showed up okay. He showed up in khakis and kind of a shirt, and I don't know if he bought it at ragtime, but it looked pretty good. And he had maroon suede shoes on. So, okay, there was nothing I was going to do at this point about the maroon suede shoes, but he looked pretty good. So we went out to this dinner, and he completely mesmerized people at this dinner. A man that I knew very well who sat at the table with us. To this day, he spent about an hour and a half with Jos total, and to this day he talks about Jos. He just was so taken with him, how witty he was, and smart he was, and gregarious he was. And he really had the whole table just engaged in this outrageous conversation. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember being completely torn between being completely engaged in this outrageous conversation and being just a bit horrified that I'm sitting at this table with all these people I have to do business with, and we're having this outrageous conversation. But it was just so incredible. So we go off to the Performing Arts Center, And we're in the Performing Arts Center. Everybody's very prim and proper and dressed up, and we're watching this play, and it's a little slow. I mean, you know, the Joy Luck Club was very much a chick flick when they made it into a movie, and the musical is very much a chick play. So Jos was kind of not really into this play, and you could tell he was getting a little fidgety. And he's tall, and the rows in the Performing Arts Center are really close together, even by my standards. And so he was getting a little fidgety. So when the intermission came, he really wanted out of that row. He wanted to be out and get some room. So we were sitting about 4 seats in from the end of the aisle, and we all stood up at intermission, and the 2 people who were sitting on the end were getting ready to kind of file out, but they weren't really moving fast enough for Jos. So Jos notices that in the row behind us, the people had filed out. So in this really fancy occasion with all these, you know, big whoop-de-doo people, Jos proceeds to step over the back of the chairs like he's in a bleachers at a football game, and then walks out the aisle and into the lobby of the Performing Arts Center. Meanwhile, the usher in the aisle, who of course knew me, eyes get really wide as she sees this man stepping over the back of the seats, which you don't really do in the Performing Arts Center, and just looks at me with this horrified look on her face, like, who is this man stepping over the seats in the Performing Arts Center? And I just was like, okay, I don't know this guy. And it was so Jos, because he just wasn't gonna be worried about what was proper and what he was. He was just a guy who was bored at this stupid play, and he wanted to get out and stretch his legs. And I remember that night going, okay, well, maybe no more official functions for Jos. But it was just so funny. It was just so classically him. And I feel so cheated that we didn't get to spend more time together outside of work. It wasn't that we didn't have fun at work. It was just that I felt that there were so many more things I wanted to talk to him about, and so many more things about him I wanted to learn. I mean, we had wonderful political discussions. There wasn't anything we didn't talk about. There wasn't anything I felt like I couldn't talk to him about. And it just clicked so well when we were talking and we were together, that I feel really robbed. I feel like there were so many things that we could have done together and enjoyed together. And the Napa trip, you know, we went on our department trip to Napa on the bike trip, and almost killed me. I was not in shape, and all those folks were just zooming on ahead, and it was so much fun to spend the whole day with him outside of work. And once in a while we have lunch together, and I just try and think of all of the little times we spent together. And I just wish that there were more, and I have to be very thankful that this guy interviewed me for this job at Web TV and decided to hire me, because I learned Perl from him, and I learned JavaScript from him, and I learned about color television from him, and I just looked at the world in such a different way when I looked at it through his eyes, that I don't know who there will ever be who will let me see the world that way again.